I'm Ozzie closing.
I don't bite.
My cousin Leroy gave me that name, my real name is Ray. You know, this is a military thing, we're gonna stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag is over here.
Oh, the flag is there.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, I was born and raised in Mequon. I was baptized at St. John's here, confirmed at St. John's. And in 68, I was drafted. And I just thought, well, everybody said, well, maybe you can get a farm deferment, or you can get this and that, or run away to Canada or whatever, like some of the guys did. So now I'm just gonna go and do it. And the good Lord led me through it tremendously. And there's many different ways where he says in the Bible, he says, just follow me, I'll lead you, I'll guide you. And he did. I went through basic training at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, advanced infantry training at Fort Lewis, Washington. And then I was in Vietnam, or in jump school right after basic training, or after AIT, advanced infantry training. I went to jump school. I learned to be a paratrooper. That was the thing of jumping. Airborne was something that's kind of different than other military. It's volunteer. They tell you, when you start, if you, first of all, I had to volunteer to do it. They asked if I wanted to, and I said, yeah, I'll do it. And then you can quit anytime you want. If it's getting too much for you, if you don't feel that you want to jump out of an airplane anymore, you don't want to afraid of going up high. That's a 200-foot, 50-foot tower that you train off of. The first week you just basically jump off a platform about 4 feet high. You jump off the platform and land in some sawdust, and you practice your foot arrangement, how you land with your feet. You always want to put your feet together, and you don't come down like a post. You come down like a rocking chair. You turn your body. You know, this side of my body is like a rocking chair now. You grab your helmet to hold your head, and you want to land with your feet and rock right over you, so you don't hit solid. And if you do it right, you can snap your legs a little bit, you can land standing up. But you gotta, that's one of the tricky things when you're coming down with a parachute, you're swinging. Now, which way are you gonna land? You're gonna land frontwards, you're gonna land sideways to the right, or the left, and or you're gonna land to the right. Either way, you gotta imagine which way are you gonna come, because coming down with a parachute, it's kind of weird. You're not coming down, the ground's coming up. You have to judge how fast is that ground coming up at you. It's kind of funny, and especially if you're coming down frontwards or backwards. Now you gotta try to hit with your feet and then spin before you go into a roll. But that's what you practiced the first week of training. You did a lot of that. You jumped off the platform and into just a sawdust pit. You trained this way and that way. They even had what I call a swing landing hanger. They put you up on a platform about 8 feet high, well, maybe even 12 feet. And you're hanging on you got the parachute harness on, but you're hanging on 2 straps here, and the guy's got it you're up on a pulley. And you jump off the platform, and the guy's got hanging onto that rope. And you jump off and you start swinging, and whenever he feels like it, he just lets go of that rope, and you got to practice landing. That's just the next phase, but that's all in the first week of training. You get to the third week of training, or the second week of training, you're jumping off a tower like that. There's actually a guy hanging on the tower. There's a pipe bracket hanging around here. It's made of pipe, and they drop it down, and your parachute is on the ground, and they hook it on there all the way around. It just kind of latches on like this one. It's latched on, and he pulls you up. That's the weirdest feeling. You're going up on his winch, going good. You can feel the pulleys and stuff going, and you're jerking on as the ground is falling down away from you, 250 feet. Then when you get up to the top, then the guy's got a bullhorn. He said, "Is everything all right up there?" And you put your hands on your head, and he said, "That means yes." Okay, go. So then they just jiggle it a little bit, and all the latches release, and you're drifting down. Kind of like just sailing down, kind of cool. Then the last week is you jump on an airplane. But that was, everybody says, well, why in the world do you want to jump out of a perfectly nice airplane? Even the airplanes that I jumped out of in training in '68, there was still World War II planes. You got to remember, I didn't know this information until about a year ago. I saw it on Story Television. They did a 2-hour special on the 173rd Airborne. And what they started out talking about is as soon as Hitler started going into other countries, when he first started, the guys in the White House were trying to figure out, what are we ever going to do to get him out of here? What is going to have to be done? He started moving on and getting more land and so forth in other countries. He's just trying to eat them up. Well, he's going to be a heck of a bugger to try to stop. They started making a plan. How are we going to do this? And parachuting was very new. It hadn't been used in combat yet. It was very, very new. And one of the main guys that started pushing it was General Billy Mitchell of Mitchell Field. He's the guy that started pushing it. There's an article about that in one of my little books here, that he started doing that. And then he even got a handful of guys together, and they put some stuff together, and they jumped out of a plane, and a bunch of guys watched him do it, and he said that's a bunch of baloney. It canned the whole works. But then it went on and on, as Hitler was getting more and more, then they started waking up, and some other guys got in. There was even I think it was a general, another guy, he wanted to put together like 200 guys. He needed volunteers to put together. And he had just overnight, he had, in a short time, he had a whole bunch of guys volunteer. I'll do it. They all wanted to be part of this new type of warfare. And he said, it says in the article, there was a bunch of guys that had brass, colonels and captains and stuff. They all had to take a cut in their rank in order to get down to the same as these other guys that were, so they're equal. So they're all equal in training. And they gladly did. There was a whole bunch of guys that actually got busted because they wanted to be part of that organization. There's an article in the book about that. And it's just amazing the way that was all put together to make that. Anyhow, they had to design an airplane for it. They were jumping out of something else. I don't know. They mentioned the model. I don't know what that really looks like. But this was a C-119, which was basically made for jumping. It's got, if you look at it real close, there's a wing and the engine and a tail. It's got 2 tails going back, and they're connected in the back here. So the fuselage is in the middle. And a big thing that they talked about in jumping out of a regular airplane, sometimes they say, well, you just run out the back. Well, you take on a C-130, they got the big back ramp, but if the turbulence would hit you wrong, it could lift you up, and the tail is right there. If you don't, you want to drop down and make sure you get under that tail. Well, this thing here, you're below it already. It was designed for paratrooping. And this is one of the planes that they used when they invaded the beaches with an airplane like this. As long as I'm on the subject, I learned on that show that when they were ready to invade the beaches, they had this all planned already, that there were thousands of ships out there with thousands of men they were gonna bring in and invade. There were five beaches that they did all at the same time. But before they did it, this movie that they showed on television, the 173rd put 50,000 troopers, infantry troop men, behind the lines. And Hitler had no idea they were in there. They dropped them in at night. They flew them in at night. Now this took a couple of nights to get them all in there. And they flew them in with these airplanes. Now like I started saying that some people would tease me about why you jump out of a perfect good airplane. Well, when this airplane was parked on the tarmac and we had to go climb up a ladder to get in there. I don't think it was in front. No. Anyhow, we had to climb up a ladder to get in there. And anyhow, we all got in there, and there was an officer on the bottom of the ladder. He said, "Remember that promise. If you go in that plane, you're coming out the door. You can't quit that anymore. You can quit before. If you want to quit, you're going to quit right now." He reminded you of that as you're walking up. The guy reminded you of that. So everybody that's going up there, if the rest of the guys will help you out the door if you need some help. So it's kind of a prestigious thing. It's kind of a fun thing to be able to do that and conquer it. But anyhow, I remember that the first jump, the airplane was sitting there, and we all got up in the plane. We loaded the plane, and you could see out the window. There's a guy out in front of the plane. He had his hands up. He's pointing to the pilot, and he points over to that engine. He said, "Okay, fire up that engine." He cranked that engine. Oh, the engine would cough and spit and fart and pop around. It was a reciprocating engine. Anyhow, it coughed and smoked and popped, and finally it ran. Oh, then he pointed over this engine. Okay, start up that one. And that one would cough and spit and fart. And by the time he got that one running, that one stopped. They had to start that one over again. So all the guys who were sitting inside there, and everybody always teases about jumping on a perfectly good airplane. It felt kind of good to get out the door. Because then it's like you're in heaven. The vibration is gone. Once you get past, the engine is right up here, and you're jumping out right behind it. That air going past this area is going 100 miles an hour. That's a slow speed for an airplane of like that nature. It would be 100 miles an hour. So that air is going pretty fast. But once you get past there and the chute deploys, you're just floating. It's just, you're like an angel up there. You're just floating, and you can hear the silk as you hear like a flag blowing on a windy day. That your silk is floating out there like that. And you can talk to the guys that are over there, because a whole bunch of you go out together. And it was kind of fun, being a paratrooper. So that was the last part of the training. That was it. Then from there on it was So which one you put?
No one had that one. Where's the other click?
Huh?
It's over here.
Right here.
There it goes. Okay.
How high is that airplane off the ground in that picture?
In the picture, they told us that we were jumping about 1,200 feet.
Okay.
And they thought that was a safe way for training. If it's going to really be a combat jump, they dropped as low as 600. But then you got to be pretty sure of yourself. A big thing is when you go out the door, you have to, you go out, you grab the door and you throw yourself out. And as soon as you get out, you got to get your elbows in, and your feet have to stay together. And you bend over and you'll be looking at your feet. And naturally, as you fall, your body is heavier on the top than the bottom. So your feet will be up by the horizon. And by the time you see your feet on the horizon, you should be popped. You're supposed to count to 3, 1, 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000. Then you're supposed to look up to make sure you got silk, that it's coming out. And if you would go out the door a little bit crooked, or have one arm out, remember that air's going 100 miles an hour past you, that could catch your arm and spin you. And you would have no idea that it's happening. Ask Leroy Heuser about that once. He got that. And then what it does is your chute is being pulled out of your pack, out of your backpack, and you're spinning. What's happening? You're gonna roll it up. They call it a cigarette roll. But if you notice that that's what's happening, you got another chute on your side, but first you have to reach up, you grab the two big buckles up and you gotta pull them down. That frees you of that other chute. Then you gotta lean backwards, you pull a big handle here on the side. There's another one, this one pops out with a spring. It's about the size of an umbrella. It pops out and opens up. And that catches the air and pulls your reserve suit out. So, to help you get down. This is the way we moved when I was in Vietnam. At first when I went to Nam, we went through Cam Ranh Bay. It's on the southern end of Vietnam, Cam Ranh Bay. And we stayed there. It took a couple of days. We had to basically process in. Once they knew that we were in country, then they started to find out where they wanted to send us to. And I put down, well, they knew that I was airborne qualified. But it took about 3 days to get out of Cam Ranh Bay. They had formations 2 or 3 times a day, and sometimes there'd be 2,000 guys out there. But they call their names off, and just like that, you're out of there. Then you get on a plane, go to the airport, and get on a plane or get dropped off at an organization. I went to An K. That was the home of right in the Central Highlands. That was the home of the 173rd Airborne. From there, they equipped us. We had no gear or anything yet from Vietnam, no hunting gear, and they equipped us with a backpack. They equipped us with an M16 and ammunition, and they gave us each a box of sea rations. A case of sea rations is about the size of a case of a canned beer. Like if you have 24 cans in a box about that long, about that wide, about that high. But there's 12 boxes, individual boxes, and they're probably about the size of this thing here, but that high. But there's 12 of those in there, and they've got all the cans and stuff in there, and those are your meals. Anyhow, we had really nothing to do, so we had to pack that in our rucksack. So I packed this all in my rucksack. I had them all kind of neat in order, so I could see the titles on top. I could once open it up, I could see what do I feel like eating tonight, and so forth. And I had some other stuff that I had to put in there. I had ammunition I had to put in there, ammunition for the M16. We had to carry a bunch of magazines for them. That I all put in there and everything. Anyhow, then we got out then choppers came in and picked us up and took us out to the field, out to our unit. And then I thought, I think there were 13 of us guys at first. It went out, so that would have been 2 loads on a Huey like that. That was a Huey, that was a workhorse of Vietnam for troops and so forth, everything, a lot of stuff. But anyhow, they took us all out to the unit, and then a guy comes up to and stands there. He had no brass or any insignias on or anything. He stood in front of us. He said, I'm going to tell you first. He said, I'm your company commander, but I never want to see you salute me or call me sir. So, did I get off on the wrong part of the island here or what? Because we were trained, there was a drilled into us. Every time you meet an officer on the street, you're walking, you meet him on the sidewalk or something. It's up to the lower grade guy has to initiate it. You salute him and say, good morning, sir. The greeting of the day. Good morning, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Good evening, sir. Or it's a man, it's ma'am. It's up to you to initiate the salute. And if you don't, he's gonna stop you, and you're gonna do some push-ups. That's the biggest thing. Drop and give me 10. That's the biggest thing. you do a couple hundred of them a day in training. That's nothing unusual. You kind of chuckle at it, but it builds up the arms so you can do a lot of push-ups. Anyhow, the guy stood up there and he said, I'm your company commander, but I never want to see you salute me, I never want to see you call me sir. Well, and they talked about that in training a little bit too. He's an officer and he doesn't want to be picked out. If a sniper is sitting out 100 yards away with his eyeglasses on and he can see you saluting, and he's got one shot in his gun, in his barrel, who's he gonna take out? He's not gonna take me out, he's gonna take him out. It's all part of the war. So anyhow, we formed a perimeter. We moved that night, actually. Then that night, or that day after we got there, we were assigned to a platoon. He assigned us to which platoon we were supposed to go to, and we were all spread out. There's different squads and different platoons. And I went to a guy, and he was my platoon leader. And the guy's name is Hoss Rogel. And I'll never forget that name. Like he's a black guy from Alabama with that kind of an education. And he said, Clausy, get over here. Oh, okay, here I am, get over here. Take your pack off. Oh, I took off my pack. And he proceeds to open it up and dump everything out that I had packed in it so neat. I thought, I don't know about this guy, or I'm a little discouraged about what I just put that all in it. I said, eat. He said, no, you take all of these boxes of sea rations, all of these meals, you open them all up, you throw the box in the fire, you have a little fire going there, you throw the box in the fire, you throw everything in it that you don't want. Because you're gonna carry this weight. That's a lot after you get loaded up on. That's a lot to carry. We average probably between 80 and 100 pounds on our back all the time, because we carried a week's supply of food. And I had, after a while, I had 7 quarts of water we carried. 7 canteens I had hanging on me. And that all adds up. But anyhow, he and I got along good. And then he took the backpack, it had a steel frame. It went up across your back, then it went down the sides, and then it came forward here a little bit with a loop. But then it went across the back about here. And that bag that was tied on there was tied on down here by my belt. He said, you don't want that tied on down there. It's gonna be hard to carry that weight that you got in there. He said, you put that up as high as possible. So he took it off and he showed me how to change the buckles around, and he got it way up on top of you. That's where you want it. You want that weight up on top. So when you bend over, imagine you're carrying 100 pounds on your back. That goes on in the morning and stays there all day. You don't take it off. You don't sit down. If you sit down, it's with the pack on. You might sit on the grass someplace, but it's with the pack on. But that's what we had to do. Anyhow, he proceeded to show me how to lighten my load. So anything that you had in there, you open up all the boxes, throw the boxes in the fire. You still had the cans, they had a label on, but their cans are in the box to make some kind of a meal. There's usually a main can with either chili in it, or ham and beans, or beans and wieners, and they're all different meals that they had packed in there. Then next to it might be a can of peaches, and maybe a shorter can, and there was a little can of, it was only maybe an inch high, and that was there could have been bread in there, it could have been a cookie in there. Some of them had bread and maybe a little peanut butter in there, something to put all together. It's everything that was in those cans is waterproof, so when it gets soaking wet, it doesn't get in the can. Then if you want to come up here after a while, you can look, and this is what they issued out for a can opener, a P38 can opener. I still got the original one in my pocket from when I was in basic training. And it's very handy to have this, If you go to a picnic someplace where they're cooking out and you're out by the beach or someplace or in the woods, somebody says, who's got a can opener to open the beans or the sauerkraut? I got one. I got it right there. No problem. I can zip right around there. But I got a couple of them up there to look at. I got a couple other things that are in C rations too. I should have a whole set, but I don't anymore. Just a little packet of salt, sugar. There's no pepper. Your body doesn't need pepper. You know, these are the only thing that your body needs. And there's even a couple cigarettes. Now, I didn't smoke, but I still carried cigarettes. Anybody guess why?
Traded them.
This one got 3 in there. I think there was 4 in there at once. They're still in the box. But if you're working in the swamp, you go through the swamps, or you're in the mud, you get leeches. You come out, you got leeches. You got to pull your pants down. That's the buddy system. You got to take your shirt off. If you think you got them, you can feel it if they're biting in there. But they'll burrow a hole right into your skin, into your flesh. Now the way to get them out, you light up a cigarette and you hold that on there. They'll back out. That's why everybody carried them, even if they smoked them or not. At least they gotta have one that you carried anyhow. But they're in every meal. So that's one of the things you throw most of them away for a week. If you got one of these and for a week, that's almost enough. 2 maybe. Book of matches was in there. You see matches, that's to start a little fire. Anybody guess what this is? Rolled up. Individual squares of toilet paper. Rolled up. No, there's no directions on there how to use it. You can maybe use a stick. Done that too already. Done that too. Okay, now, then we were all set. Until that night we moved out. And one of the things the new guys got out there, what they call us cherries. We're green, we're cherries. So us cherries, we were the new guys. We all had new clothes on, a new backpack with paint on, and we're all nice and new looking. And that's the way you don't want to be. So that they let us out and we moved to a different area, and we went through quicksand that was this deep. Where you hold your rifle up and the other guy pulls on the muzzle and you may form a chain going through the quicksand. So now when everybody comes out, we all look the same. Our shoes are the same, we're all full of sand, and just all suit. So now we're all equal. That was a big thing about it in the military, everybody's equal. This is one of the ways we moved out in the field. We moved quite a bit. Choppers came in, and if we're gonna be moving someplace, we didn't know. They never told us anything what's going to happen or what. They'll lead us out into open field. Choppers will come in. Sometimes there'll be only 1 or 2, and they'll make 6 trips and shuttle the company. Then you know it's going to be pretty safe where they're going. If they come up with like 20 of them, they're going to move quite a few guys. So we really didn't know. But that's just unloading it. This is the Huey, and on the side here, you see there's a head sticking out the door here. That guy's sitting he's chained in here. He's got a strap in. He's not sitting on a little seat, but he's a machine gunner. He's the door gunner. There's one on each side of the doors. You see the Hueys, there's always one guy on each side. In case he's coming in someplace, he gets shot at, he can at least return fire at a position. Sometimes the Hueys, if it's an unsafe area, it might be what they call a hot LZ, or it's LZ is a landing zone. If the hot LZ, they won't even land. They'll just come in and hover, like here. And then the door gunner, he's got radio communication with the pilot. The pilot says, This is it, they're down there, it's hot LZ, they're down there shooting at us, I gotta get out of here, then the door gunner gives you a tap on the shoulder, and, well, if you don't like it, from there he's going up, if you don't like 5 feet, how about 10? Because from there on, he's going up. So it's usually when we load the choppers, the first 2 guys from each side go in, they crawl in and they cross their legs, they sit in the middle. Then you got 2 guys on each side sitting with your feet hanging out the door. And you're just hanging there. There's no safety belt down there, there's no nothing. You're just hanging there. But we moved with choppers where it looked like this already. A couple of times we did, they moved the one time they kind of guessed that there was like 60 of them up there. It sounded like bees, bumblebees up there, so many choppers. But they led us all to this big field, and just like that, they started coming up over the hill. If it's gonna be if they know it's a hot LZ, and we can tell if it is, if they got these guys that are escorting us, this is a Cobra that was built, they did equip the Hueys with guns, rockets and other artillery and so forth, other guns, big massive guns. But this guy here, this was newly designed for Vietnam. When I was there, it was kind of like brand new, these guys here. They're only 33 inches wide, so if you can fly right at a target, it's harder to hit him. The co-pilot actually sits in the front, and the pilot sits back here. The co-pilot sits a lot lower, because he can run this big gun. This gun, that's a big machine gun up down there, and he can actually, there's a little window underneath it, he can actually fire down underneath him behind the chopper. He can, if they fly over a hot installment down there, he can fly over it, he can put firepower on it. The main thing is to put firepower on there, that means those guys are gonna duck down. So that will give the other choppers maybe time to drop their load, come in and drop their load. The first night that we were out on the field, we set up camp, and in the middle of the night, they heard a bunch of commotion about what was going on. You know, 2 of the brand new cherries got mauled by a tiger. And they had to get evac out. Then they had a short stay. But this is a very common thing. This is a gun, it's called a 105 howitzer gun. This is a Chinook. They did a lot of blow work. They were an easier target to try to shoot down, but that's why they stayed away from those areas, or they got a lot of power, a lot of escort otherwise. He's carrying maybe some ammunition, but this is at a fire base. We moved in one time to an area of a fire base, and we had just moved into it in the afternoon, late in the afternoon, and we thought, oh, this is kind of cool. The fire base is usually out in the open someplace, a lot of times on top of a hill. There'd be 6 guns, there'd be 6 howitzers like that. They have a formation that they put themselves in, so they can all shoot. Those things go for miles, like 5 miles, 7 miles, that they can fire at those howitzers. And if we're an infantry unit, we'll try to work within that perimeter, so that if something gets real heavy out there, we can get on the radio, we call it in, we give them our coordinates where we're located. Now there's no roads out there. You're out in the jungle, there's no roads. The only way you can tell about where you are, number one, we're told we're supposed to count our steps. Try to do that all day once. Walk someplace and count your steps, how far you went. But guys would you gotta estimate how far you went, because if you knew where you were located yesterday, now you know where you are now, because you counted so many steps. And then they have the maps that they have. They're contour maps. They got mountains, with circles around them, and there's a number on top, and it tells you the height of that mountain. Now then you look around, you look on the map about where you might be, and you say, oh, there's a mountain over there, and you estimate the distance that it is away and the height of it, and see if that matches what's on the map. Then you look at another one that might be over there, and you can kind of pinpoint yourself where you're at. So then you know about where you're at, and you call in the artillery, your coordinates on the map, and they'll fire around. If you're getting a lot of hot fire from the enemy, you call that in, and they'll shoot out around, and then you have a forward observer. He'll recognize that, run round, and he'll say, oh yeah, you're way over to the right too far. So move it to the left 1,000 clicks, 1,000 meters. Move it over. So they'll swing their barrel around then. You know, or maybe it's gotta go farther out or closer in. But that way you can work that round up, right up into the area that you want it at. Anyhow, we were working at a fire base. We came into the fire base at one time, and the infantry unit usually supports the fire base at night. They have a perimeter set up already. Yeah, usually that's all built already. They got bunkers and foxholes and stuff out there. And we came in and we occupied those bunkers, and anyhow, it was kind of a drizzly night, and we actually had to put, you look at an area like that, every time you look on that, you wonder, now if we're gonna get hit from anywhere, where's the logical spot? And there was a logical spot to one direction. There was all heavy woods around the whole thing. There was one open area. It was quite open, and it went down a little bit, then it came up to a rise. But that was probably a half a mile away, that rise. But we found out that'd be, if we're gonna get a massive invasion, they would maybe come from that direction. Anyhow, with that night we got hit. And and somebody hollered out, incoming, we just had a bunch of explosions were happening. And they said, incoming, you know, so everybody jumped in their foxhole. I didn't jump in my foxhole. I thought, I didn't know where I was, and I was watching what was going on. Here the enemy was inside our perimeter. They had crawled inside our perimeter. And this is the first time I've ever seen anything like that. It's kind of ugly though. But a lot of these kids are maybe 12 or 15 years old. And they got tourniquets around their armpits, wire around their arms, right up in their pits, around their legs, way up in their crotch. Wire tourniquets so they stop the circulation so they feel no pain. And if they're coming crawling at you, you can shoot their limb off and they don't feel it. But they came in a perimeter, and a lot of them, they had satchel charges wrapped around their waist, looked like a flour bag, about that thick, all the way around with a string hanging on. And the camp was made up with, you had your guns. There was quite an area that had the guns positioned, and then they had the command post was actually off to the side, but it was a shipping container, a steel shipping container, that they had dug a hole, and they placed the steel shipping container in it, and they buried it again, and put sandbags and logs over the top. But to get to it, for a door, they left a walkway coming down a ramp, and then you could get in that, and then a shipping container. And that was the entrance. Anyhow, one of them gooks got down in there, and he went through that door and he pulled his rope. He blew out all the officers on that entire hill. There was no command. Well, we didn't know that. It's dark. Nobody else knew that. We thought we were getting incoming rounds at first. And then there was another container like that with all the radio communication for the guns. And because we carried portable radios on, but they didn't go that far, maybe a mile or two that they went. But they had ones that could go a long ways. They could radio, a longer distance. but they blew that one up too. And here we are in the middle of the night, and we still didn't know what was happening. Well, they took somebody hollered beehive round. Well, they told us about this in the training. A beehive round is for those howitzers. These are World War II weapons, these howitzers. This is a 105 howitzer. That's a small one, very small. But they made a round for it, otherwise they were made for launching artillery. Katuk, it goes up and when it lands, and that's what explodes and does the damage. But they made what they call a beehive round. This is the shell that's left over. The head went on there yet to make it longer. He's throwing the shell out. But anyhow, the beehive round, they would stuff them. They made up those rounds as they needed them. They put the type of projectile in there that they wanted, and then I learned that the explosions that they put was a little sack of powder, but that was gunpowder that they put in there. But they had different charges. I remember hearing them say charge 7, charge 9, charge 6. They would put in there, then it wouldn't go as far. Well, now they put a heavy charge in there, and they stuck that beehive round. A beehive round is that whole cylinder, it's like a wad of wax. And about that big around, about that long. And within that, molded in that wax, there's 700 little arrows, about 1.5 inches long, with 2 little fins out the back. And that's made to shoot point blank at human beings. Disappoint them from coming any further. It wouldn't kill them, but you can tell if you got it peppered in your skin, you're not gonna come any closer. But they cranked their barrels down. There was only I think there was 4 guns that were left, because some of them were blown out of service. But so they cranked their barrels on down, they fired beehive rounds. And Duke. And meanwhile, we're infantrymen here, we're still trying to find out what are we supposed to do, who's in charge. No, there's nobody giving any orders, because there's nobody alive giving any orders. So we learned that in training too. It's the highest ranking man, was a buck sergeant, E5 buck sergeant. But anyhow, we started figuring out that they're inside the perimeter. We gotta fight this thing from the inside. So, and get the guys out. We shot a couple of them, yet they were still alive, and we shot them before they blew themselves up. But there was guys that went in their bunkers. There was one guy, he had a machine gun, and the bunker was made up. There was a hole probably about the size of this table, maybe 6 feet long, 4 feet deep. And then you build sandbags along the side of it, and you leave a couple little holes in it, and you put some logs over the top. Tree logs over the top and sandbags over the top of that. And you leave a little hole there, so you can either shoot the machine gun out that hole, or it's very common if you know it's gonna be a longer ways away, the guy will set the machine gun on top. So he can just sit behind the bunker and shoot that way, with a machine gun over the top of the bunker. Very common. And he had his machine gun sitting on top of the bunker. But when they called incoming rounds, get in the bunker, he crawled in the bunker. Duke picked up his machine gun and shot him. He sprayed it inside. Shot everybody inside the whole bunker. Well, the good Lord told me, don't get in that bunker. So I didn't go in. I crawled, I was sitting on the outside. Just trying to figure out what's going on. While this is all going on, there's smoke going all over the place, stench going on, guys are screaming. You have no idea what's what. This is war. And the next day, when the sun came up, during that night, we called in some heavy guns. There's if you remember the old Snoopy the Red Baron, the song about that. Well, Snoopy is actually a gun. It's a gun it's a machine gun that puts out 6,000 rounds a minute. It's a multi-barrel gun that turns like a Gatling gun. It spins and it puts out 6,000 rounds a minute. And they come in a fixed wing airplane but they're way high, cause you can't, you can see them or hear them up a little bit. And every fifth round that he shoots is a tracer. It's got a red tail, so you can see them coming out of the sky, and you hear them. You see the airplane up there, and you can hear them, and you can just hear it go, "Eh," and you see a red line coming, like a snake coming down. Before it even hits the ground, he has to stop his shot. But he's got a couple thousand rounds. But they say they can cover an area of a football field, like every square foot, in a matter of seconds. But we called those guys in to blow this area out where we were shooting those beehive rounds. We had the whole thing all swept out. It's war as hell. Anyhow, the next morning, we just sat there, and then, but then finally the sun started coming, breaking through, and started coming. You could see a little bit what's going on. Now the heavy part is over, the shooting stopped, and we said another thing we were worried about after a while, when they cranked their barrels down, we had what they call an outpost sitting out there. Usually when we set up in a perimeter, you set up a perimeter, and however we walked into that area, after you establish yourself, your spots, you stand, two guys have to go back on the trail we just came in on, and go back maybe 1,000 feet back, and you set up ambush. You take a radio along, and you just hide off the side of that trail. They had what they call a claymore mine. It was probably not a whole lot bigger than this box. It sat like that. It looked kind of like that. It had legs on it, but it sat up a little higher. And it was loaded. It was about an inch thick. It was made out of two pieces of like fiberglass. And the back of it was C4 explosive, and the front of it was like beeswax with all little BBs on it. And you had a detonator that you put it on top, and then you pull the wire back, and you pull it back, and you had about 50 feet of wire. You don't want to sit behind it. You want to sit off to the side, and you squeeze it with your hand. It would click like a magneto. It clicked, and that would blow that thing up. And you set if you're going on, you're setting on an ambush. If you've got two guys, they should each probably have one. So you set two of them on the trail. Now you just basically, their job is to basically sit there and watch. If somebody comes down that trail, it's up to you to decide if you want to try to take them out. But maybe there's only two guys coming, there might be 50 behind them. So you're best off to just stay quiet, don't sneeze, let them walk right in front of you, and then you can grab your radio and you click it, click, 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 and you can give a signal on to the post, because that's where the trail is heading to, where the rest of the guys are. Then they know that there's something coming. Because you don't want to expose yourself if they don't know you're there. You don't want to expose yourself and then tell them what's going on. But anyhow, another thing, we had an outpost set out. We had another couple of guys we had sitting out there too. That's basically, they were doing the same thing. That wasn't the trail that we came in on, but that was right in front of where we thought we might be getting hit from. So we sent a couple of guys out there, and they were basically just hiding in the grass. Now, sometimes you think, well, what do you do? And we knew they were out there. We tried to call them in, but everything was all noise, and we didn't know if they were even alive anymore. Anyhow, they took the chance, they shoot the beehive. Now, before you load, we're trained on it because it's a brand new thing. Before you do the beehive, you holler out, beehive. And if there's anybody down there, the best thing is to get your head towards the gun, and you got your steel pot on. And that's gonna protect your head. You might get a couple darts on your shoulders. But get your body in line with it. Not perpendicular, but right in line with the gun. Anyhow, those guys were alive. mean, it's just, you just think about it, and God help them. They were alive out there. They didn't get blown away. We were so happy to see them when they came walking in the morning, when as soon as the sun was breaking. They knew that something was happening at where we were, but they didn't see anything and they didn't get him. Nothing. But now is the bad part. This is the part now, and they went through all this stuff in training. We got what they call triage. We got to sort out all these bodies. We kind of guessed that there were like 10 guys killed and like 30 or 40 wounded. This whole business. We could have very easily been, if it wouldn't have been for that beehive round, we could have very easily been wiped out. Our whole unit, the guns and all, we could have been wiped out. Because we said after we got this, the sun came up and we got our bearings and figured out what we're gonna do. Now we gotta go around and find all the guys that are still alive. And pick them up and bring them up. And we had them all lined up on the grass. And one guy even came up to me or was groaning, and I went over to comfort him a little bit. He said, and the chopper came in and the chopper went out. Why wasn't I on there? What do you tell a guy? I lifted up his blanket from here on down. He was gone. He was, and then I said, you know Jesus? So we said the Lord's Prayer. Before we were done, he was dead. But yeah, that's all part of it. Yeah, we checked out after a while when the sun came up and we got a little more connected and figured out what we're gonna do. We actually went up to that area on top of that ridge. There were 60 rucksacks up there and lots of blood up there from the enemy. But the enemy, we were not far from the Cambodia border. That was the war that we had to fight in Vietnam. They come and do that and then they run away, go, you can't get me. We're on the other side of the line. So that's how that goes. Well, I got 2 rounds here. These are AK-47 rounds, if you wanna come and look at them after a while. We were diddly bopping through the bush, and we tried to go single file. And we were moving through the bush, and all of a sudden we get fired at. We tried to keep ourselves paced, try to stay like 3 to 4 meters apart. It's just so if they pop up, and that's what they're gonna do, they're gonna pop up, try to spray. Well, if you're in a bunch, they're gonna wait for that bunch to get there, you get more guys. But if you're spread out, you're only gonna get 1 or 2. And sure enough, they got get 1 guy. But we got them. And one guy popped up and he started shooting, the other guy popped up and his weapon went click. There he stands there, click. Well, we mowed him down. Well, I went over there after a while and I thought, I wonder what happened. Why did it go click? I took his rifle, I took his magazine out, I opened it up, and these 2 rounds, one of them is dented a little bit. I think what's it? Yeah, this one here is dented. That's probably why it won. That might have saved my life. Because I wasn't that far away in the line. I don't know, but I put those in my pocket. Well, from that, because we were down on manpower, we actually connected it, and I was in Alpha Company, and we actually checked out with, we merged with Charlie Company, I think I heard but they had a lot of loss also. So we put the 2 companies together, then we could move again. here's a picture of the howitzer, here's a picture of the parapet walls that they built around the guns. A bomb would land out here someplace and go boom, the shrapnel would stay away from the gun, and so the guns could stay firing. But they all built their walls around them and stuff like that. Now, if you ever sit on the back porch sometimes at night and you hear, it's starting to get dark, but you hear the booming of a thunderstorm coming, but it could be miles away, but you hear the boom, the boom, the boom. It just continually comes, or you could hear like a thunderstorm is coming, something happens. Well, we heard that a lot of times in Vietnam. See, like I tell you, we as peons, we were never told what's happening. But we listened for that, and that's a sign of, we heard that one night. It was only about 2 weeks after that other massacre. But we heard thunder like that, that's from these guys. There's a B-52. Those are 8 jet engines on there. 10,000 pound bombs that they're carrying. And they were blasting out an area not far from the Cambodia border there too. But what happened is they moved, they started bombing it, and there was an encampment there, they figured, and they just packed up and go across the fence line, and that's it. They're safe. The enemy. Anyhow, that's sure enough. Everybody said, "You hear that noise out there? That's right over there. That's where we're going to be going tomorrow." With that, sure enough, after an all-day hike, we get to the area, and you want to walk through a mess. I never was through a mess like that. With a B-52, those craters are right in the woods, trees that big, blown to smithereens. But everything that's blown is laying someplace, and we had to climb over that. And the craters in the ground, 30 feet in diameter, 10 feet deep craters, and one after another. One here, another one there, and one half inside of the other one. All that loose ground is someplace. You ever try to walk along the beach? It's a lot easier to walk on the beach, especially if you're carrying weight, where where the sand is a little wet, you don't settle in, than walk in the dry sand over here. Well, now we're walking in that dry powder, and it's a knee deep. And try to walk in there, try to climb over all those trees and stuff. That was the area we got there. But from the time we heard these guys, they used these guys, and they got artillery going there at the same time in between. But we heard these guys bombing over there, figured, well, that's where we're going. You were right. We get in there, and we get close to the area. It was just before dark. You get close to the area, there's a little stream on the bottom of the hill, a little stream, water stream, and then we see some wire. Oh, there's wire here. And it's going up the hill. So we followed it, and up the hill. There was an encampment up there, amongst all those craters. There's an encampment, and the fires were still going. They saw us coming, and they dilly-bopped across the fence into Cambodia. Anyhow, we didn't, like I say, we didn't know what was happening. Anyhow, we set up camp around their encampment, and we set up camp there. We stayed there overnight, and we did the whole thing. We put our outpost guys out and got ambush guys down the trail, and the whole thing. Nothing happened. Next morning, we thought, well, now we're going to get up and we're going to do something. We're going to move. We didn't. We sat there. Thought, what's going on here? Maybe they don't know where to put us. Maybe because of no officers or something, we're low on guys. We don't know what's going on. So we didn't go anywhere. We sat there all day. So what is the problem here? We couldn't figure it out. Very seldom you do that. You sit someplace like that all day. We sat there all day. And then even when it started getting dark, we put our outpost back out again. We set the guys out again, set up their ambush here and there, various spots. Then when it just got probably you don't have a time clock, we have no idea what time it is, maybe 9 o'clock or so. And then they say, pack up, we're moving. What? We never moved at night. We never moved at night. Americans never moved at night. No, pack up, we're moving. What is the world's going on? Well, we did, but be quiet. Shh, don't make any noise. We packed up. Now move at night. They showed us how to do that too. In training, they showed us how to do it. You know how you walk through the jungle? It's like the elephants on a parade. You grab the tail in the front of the front, one in front of you, and you hang on because that's what steers you. That's about what you're doing. You almost got your hand on the guy's back in front of you. So if he trips and falls over, you don't walk next to him or get lost. You might go that way. But yeah, that's what we did. We moved out at night. And we probably went for about 4 hours, 5 hours to someplace. And then we got to an area that wasn't quite as thick. And then you got ambushed at night. We all of a sudden we got fired at. This is a Mike 60 machine gun. Those guys carried that. I carried it for about a week and a half. The gunner that in our platoon that had it, he actually spent a year out in the field. So he was gonna go home. But he was an enlisted man. He was a 3-year man in the Army. And when he reported back to the post he was supposed to go to, they gave him a bunch of BS. Here you got greenhorn guys that never saw blood, never fought in them, done anything, trying to tell him to spit shine his shoes. He said, I'll go back to Nam before I do that, before I listen to you. A week and a half later, he was back. Now this is not a picture of him, but I just tell you, I carried that weapon at 26 pounds extra, just that weapon, and then the ammo yet for it. See, look, he's got ammo laced all over. Those two guys with that weapon. That case, he'll kick your butt. There. But I was appointed in this move that we were just in. I was following. I was ammo bearer. This guy's got ammunition. He got a can of ammo. He's going for that gun. He's a teammate of that guy, and I was ammo bearer for the guy who was carrying that gun, the Mike 60. I didn't even have an M16. I had a grenade launcher, like a sawed-off shotgun. But anyhow, that's beside the point. Anyhow, that's what I was carrying, my pack, and I was following the machine gunner. He had a belt on of some ammo, and we got ambushed, and he dropped down in his belly, and he had to make a half a turn to the left, and he started firing. We got it from our right side. And I dropped my pack. The backpack, there's a strap on this side, you pull the tab, and the suspender just flies open, and then it's on this side, you take it, you give it a swing around. We used to play a game with that. Swing it around, and you kick your feet out at the same time and try to beat it to the ground. Because that's the only thing you got in front of you. If you're getting fired from that side, you got your pack in front of you. So anyhow, I was laying down behind my pack, and this box was strapped on in the back of it. With a couple, just those friction straps, but I had to undo them. And I was doing that, and then while he was returning fire, and we heard one go over the top. Whoa. That one's, then we heard it behind us. Well, yeah, okay, then we heard another one. That one, we looked at each other. Yeah, it's getting closer. Oh, the next one we didn't hear. You don't hear the one that hits you. Anyhow, I was laying on the ground, working those buckles, getting my can, and I heard the boom, and it was just everything. The concussion of that round, I was face down at my pack, laying on my belly, and a concussion got behind the lip of my helmet, and it tore the chin strap. Right off. I was black and blue underneath my chin, but it tore that thing right off. But but still, and now I felt I couldn't hardly move. I couldn't bend my legs, I had pain, I got trapped on the side, my calf, my arm, my back, my neck. But but I thought, hey, I'm alive, I got this can, I gotta get this can over there. I thought, well, what can I do? I couldn't, no way I could stand up or crawl, but I could roll. I got myself rolled over on my belly, and I grabbed the can, I got it up on my belly, then I rolled over once more, and then I got it rolled over the top of the can, and I got over once more. I did that 2 more times, then I had my can there. So then I got my can up there, final. When I got it on, I opened it up, and his belt was running short, but I was able to link it on, and then he just feeds out of my can. But at the same time, other guys are passing their can down too. Eventually, you gotta keep that gun going. But then it didn't take long, and then they stopped. So then anyhow, they said, cease fire. So now anyhow, they said, okay, how many we got wounded here? Well, my gunner was wounded, I was wounded, I think there were 5 guys who were wounded from that round. But, but then we waited, it probably took, I'll bet you 20 minutes, a half an hour, they called in for medevac. The Huey with the big red cross on it, that supposedly they don't have arms, they're not supposed to be shot at. Anyhow, so that Huey was coming in, it was pitch dark. So they shot up an illumination round. Just, it's basically it's white phosphorus, it burns, but it's got an umbrella over it that floats down. They shot up the illumination round, that was up there floating around, and now you could kind of see. Oh, now here I'm laying by that gunner, and I'm kind of flopping around a little bit, trying to move. And, I'm trying to look about where am I located here? So I was able to look around a little bit, and I thought, where am I here? I'm here, where's my pack? I said, well, my pack is over there. There's my helmet laying right in front of it. But between where I am now and the pack, there's a big hole in the ground. And the way it was, when I was laying there, if I would have reached out like this, I would have caught that sucker. It was that close to it. But somehow it went in the ground and it blew a hole in the ground instead of hitting hard and staying up. My body's not supposed to be here. Of other artillery rounds that I've seen that close to a man, they're unrecognizable. They're blown to just like splat on like a fly on a windshield going 100 miles an hour. You can't see them. That, from what I could see, that's where I was supposed to be, but I'm here only from help from above. The only reason I'm here. Then I was evac out. That was about the end of my story. Anybody have any questions? Sure.
What did you do before you left Nam? Weren't you a guard for camp or something?
No, actually,
That was something there.
from then on, I was injured. I went to a place called Tuiwa. It was basically like a MASH camp. I was there for a week, and a doctor never came to look at me. Then they said, you're going to Japan. Well, that felt good. But I couldn't walk. But that time I was dragging myself around a little bit with some crutches. But it's this real weird feeling, and I didn't know. Then I was 4 months in Japan in the hospital. Then they tried to say that I was chickening out, but I had shrapnel in my calf, and it's still in there. If I scratch my calf a little bit, I can feel it down my little toe. Half of my left foot, the little toe is numb, and if you draw a line right through the middle of the next toe, The outside is numb and the inside is not. But I lived with that for 50 years now already, so. But that's what I got. But I was in Japan. Then they wanted, I didn't know what I was gonna have. I had to go see the doctor. I was actually at the R&R center after a while. I got to see a Bob Hope show, at Christmas time. Yeah, mhm. Bob Hope and Aunt Margaret. Mhm. That's something really cool to see. When Bob Hope went out and did this stuff, especially in areas like this, if he was on a boat or on a camp, the thousands of guys were there. But this was in a auditorium. It was winter, it was cold out, so he couldn't do it outside, his show. So he did it inside. But he had orders that the hospital gets emptied out first. All the guys, it took us 2 hours to fill up that place. And then I could walk with a cane. I could walk. But we had to stand in line, and finally file in one line at a time and take the seats way in the far end. And then then after the seats were all filled, they started wheeling in the beds. And they, from in front of the stage, the whole thing, all the aisles were filled with beds, guys with traction on and guys in the beds, injured guys from the hospital. They hauled them all in. But as for a guy like me, you didn't say a word. You were happy these guys are in there, but that was the way Bob Hope wanted it. Otherwise, normally on something like that, you would see it be, if you didn't have any rank, you were outside. All the brass would be inside to see something like this. All the generals and captains and all the brass would be inside. But no, only if the hospital was empty. That was Bob Hope's thing. That's the way he did. He was so honest and for the troops. Any questions otherwise?
I have a question.
Yes.
You know, when you guys, would drop out of the, plane, you know, where you, for parachuting, how many guys fit in that plane?
In those airplanes?
Yeah. I think it's one of the first pictures. Yeah,
That one there, that C-119, 32.
oh, 32 people?
32. There were 2 rows. The C-130s, which is a single tail plane, they could get 4 rows in there. That's just 2 rows of guys against the outside. You had the little web seats that folded down from the wall, and your knees were almost knocking against each other. Yeah, if there were 32, you got on a low plane load. But the C-130s, if they filled those up, they got twice as much in. They had 4 rows. They got the outside row, and they got an inside row, the 2 inside rows, the guys are facing out.
Why was that? I mean, why did they have that so different?
Well, that's all that fit in that plane.
Yeah.
But this one, they wanted, it's not as critical at jumping out of this one because you have less of a chance of getting caught in that tail.
Oh, yeah.
They tried it at first with a couple of regular ones, airplanes, but that they gotta really be lucky that the guys can get out of the way of the tail. Well, they told us about that too in training. If somehow if your rope gets hooked up and it doesn't get pulled out, it gets tangled up, your cord, and you're hanging out there, flopping against the side of the plane. They said, if you can't hear them if they talk to you, they say, put your hand on your head and they'll cut you loose. That means you're conscious enough to take care of yourself and get rid of your trash and pop your reserve. Yes?
So did you ever have to paratroop into combat zone? Or
In-
was it
in a
all
combat area?
helicopter?
No, that we did that all with choppers. We didn't jump at all in Vietnam. But we were the only unit, the 173rd, that they didn't wanna use choppers 100% and say they can't not jump. But the 173rd was the only unit in Vietnam that was 100% airborne trained. So if there would have been a jump needed somewhere in country, it would have been us. Yes.
When you were in Japan, do you recall if any pastors visited you in the hospital? Our civilian chaplain was Kermit Haben, was the missionary to Japan at about that time, and I just wondered if you recalled any of that.
I knew Kermit Hamilton.
You know,
Yeah, my sister was a very good friend of his wife. They were like this.
oh yes, I know you said this.
But yeah, I knew him, and no, I didn't see him. But they had chaplains come around. When it got to the end, after a while, I thought, you know, nobody wanted to believe that I still had sensation in my foot. They just tried to figure I'm calling them bluff. And the doctor, I said, no, that can't be, it can't be. The wound is all healing up nice and no infection or anything, but I said, it's still there. I still got the feeling in my foot. And they didn't want to believe that. And I thought, now who can I talk to? They wanted to ship me to Korea. That's where they wanted me to go. And if they would have shipped me to Korea at that time, you know, I was in the June, and now this is January. So all that time would have counted in my 1 year in Vietnam, if I went back. Or if I went in Korea, I'd start a whole new tour, a 13-month tour in Korea. And after a while, I decided, I'll go back to Nam. So I volunteered to go back to Nam. Now there too, I was only E4, which wasn't much rank, and you had to be E5 or more to carry your book of papers, your 201 file, they call it. You had to be E5 or above in order to carry that. So but I carried it every time I had to go to the hospital from the R&R center. I had to hop on a shuttle bus, and it was an all-day trip to get to the hospital, see the doctor, and get back again. It was an all-day trip with but I was carrying my forms in. I thought, why can't I carry them back to now? Anyhow, nope, I had to hand them in. But I slipped out the couple pages that said my medical record. GI, what do? You just stick them under your shirt. That's where you carry forms. Shirt. you can button your shirt and still march, and nobody knows it's there. So I stuck my medical records in there, and I got back, and I flew back to Nam. I went through Cam Ranh Bay, and I was waiting for the third day for them to call my orders out again. I had checked in, never happened. I just sat there for a week, and I thought, nobody cares about me. I'm going to get out of here. So I hitchhiked to the airport, got on a plane, or plane or a truck. I think I got on an airplane, and I got a flight to Cape. Then I had a hitchhike on a truck to get up to the 173rd quarters. I talked to the command sergeant major. He was the highest dog there. I showed him my medical record. I told him who I had. Yeah, I remember that firefight. I remember that. He remembered it on record. I didn't have to remind him of it or tell him anything. Yeah, I remember that. I said, well, I'm returning back for duty. I said, by the way, have you got anything that's for me to do besides going out in the field? Let me check. Come back to me tomorrow. Because guys they'll re-up for a couple of weeks to go and sit on guard duty in Green Line, they called it. I said, you got a job on the Green Line? And he said, let me check. Come back to me tomorrow. Well, I reported in tomorrow. Nice guy. So I reported in to them again. And he said, sorry, I checked and they don't need any help on the Green Line. There's no vacancies on there right now. But I got this other thing, he said. I don't really know what it is. It's called labor control. It's when you work down at the gate. That was the best thing. The good Lord, he said, trust in me, I'll guide you. And he guided me right into that. It was the whole unit. There was like 8 guys that worked down there, and we were all misfits. you know, limited duty. There was a guy with his eardrums blown out from artillery, he couldn't hear anymore. And there was a MP there, he was 173rd. His name was Meanie. But he would go out, the labor control was in charge of all on K was a post, approximately 11 miles in diameter, had a good sized airstrip on it. Yeah, and the perimeter of it is quite a bit, quite long. There's a lot of towers on there to make the green light. Anyhow, we were, the labor control was in charge of all the personnel that worked on the post. There were 2,000 people, civilians, that had permanent jobs on the post every day. The telephone company, ice factory, the PX, all the mess halls, there were 2,000 people. And all I had to do is be down, we had to be at the gate, and then Meanie opened up the gate, there was you wouldn't believe it, they had the big fence, and we had it looked like ticket counters on the sides, and then a concertina wire all stacked up here and there, all rows and rows and rows of it, but there was a path right through the middle of it, there was a wooden boardwalk in there. And Meanie would go down, it was, I bet you 200 feet away, 300 feet. He would go down with a big chain, because he had a 45 on the side act. But he would go down and open that, and take the chain off, and allow the people to come. The people, they rushed in there. They wanted to go to work. There were 2,000.
Safe.
Huh?
They were safe.
Yeah, but, and they knew us down there, and you get to be friends with these people. The 2,000 people, they had permanent jobs on the post, with all these miscellaneous jobs to do, and the trucks were all lined up out there to pick them up, all the deuce and a halves. That was the transport. There were no buses, but all of the trucks were a Jeep or a 3/4 ton, all the pickup, how many people they had. But there was another section where they put about 1,000 people in. They did not have permanent jobs. They call them daily hires. They got another barbed wire fence, and they went into that gate over there. They got divided off. They went into like a cattle pen. Now, if there was guys that come down there and said they had a detail to do, they had to put a roof on a building. They had to fill some sandbags or a bunker or something. If they went over there and they said, I need 5 guys. I want you, and you, and you. Well, if you were down there before, you know which ones are good workers. And sometimes the same guys go down there for 2 weeks in a row, every day. And the guys either like what they're doing or they don't like it. If they don't, they'll run away. So he can't pick them out. But yeah, but they get to know them, and then it's up to us in the office to verify their ID cards, because they got civilian ID cards. They're all issued by the U.S. government, but they're civilian ID cards, and they have to turn that in, and then they get a working pass, and they get their name signed on to work with so and so on their D. But sometimes there'll be 500 of those that go out in a day, just on details. Mixing concrete for a sidewalk, or fixing a roof on a building, anything, carpenter work, anything. But I kind of enjoyed it. I like those people. It's like you're in a ticket shack, and they come in and they put their civilian ID card. You take their civilian ID card, and you had a big rack like time cards, with all the rows and rows of cards, and they're in there. They got different companies that they work for, so you know which company it is. But you get pretty quick at it. You recognize a face. Take that card. You swap the card. You take their working pass. It's got a bobby pin on it, and you give it to them, and then they can go to work. They clip it on their lapel and they go to work. Then you change that over. We also had a group of guys that came in a different window on my other side. And those are guys that they came in at night. Those are all male, and they were dressed in military fatigues and they helped out on the towers. on the green line. And they got card underground, there were 200 of them. They helped fill in around the towers, and they issued weapons, and they had a little hobby once in a while. This was made by those guys. Crossbow. And arrows. and like the guy, I asked the guy, I said, can you really shoot with that? Well, I don't want to pull it back now because it's pretty old. But he put an arrow in there once, and he was standing back, I bet you 50 feet away from the fence post. And a guy had a package of Lucky Strike cigarettes in his pocket. He took that Lucky Strikes, that package, he set it on top of the fence post. This guy takes it, goes like, right through the middle of that red circle. Right through the middle of it. They're a lot of fun. Those are the guys that, as they came in, because that was one organization, and they were all numbered from 1 to 200, and they would come in and they put their card on the desk and they would rattle off the number. And then I would try to say it back. Now I gotta try to find that number on my rack. What number is that really a match to? Well, then I would learn it, then it took me a couple weeks, but they'd be laughing at me every time. But after a while, I could rattle off the numbers. I could count. Mok hai ba boom num so bay num chin way. Mui mok mui hai mui ba mui bum. I could count Vietnamese. And that tickled the pants off them. The people that came in and work on their jobs, they usually came in with a little can of rice. It was very common. A little aluminum can with a screw on top. And we had to take that cover off and put a stick in there to make sure they didn't have a grenade in there. Just to make sure, to see what they were on the friendly side. And then they would come on. Well, some of them didn't. When they walked from downtown on K to get up to the post, there was people were selling lunch and stuff. A big thing was it looked like a tortilla or something, but it's made out of rice, because that's what they had. They must grind it up and then roll it out, make a rolling pin and dry it. It's hanging on the fence. When you drive past with the tanks, it gets all dirty. I thought it was diapers hanging there. It's their food. But anyhow, the people that come in, especially the women, they're so real nice when they smile like they got black teeth. They put some black gook on their teeth as a preservative. They smile at you. Anyhow, they were trying me. They would put something, she would offer me something to eat. And then I would say, oh, yeah, and then I would try to eat a little piece of that, he'd break a little piece of that white off. That's their lunch, they thought they just wanted to give me something to try. Well, so I would take it, I would chew on it a little bit and eat it. Well, yeah, well, that made fire. When they start rattling, they're telling all their friends down the line that I'm eating their stuff. And he's not throwing it away. Other guys would take that on the ground, they wouldn't touch it, so. But I would try it. Then next day they would come in with something else. And something else, and something else.
Did they speak any English if they were
A little
working on the
bit,
post?
a little bit. Through the interpreters they could. But there were some common words that you could make. Buku is big, TT is small. Buku, I mean that's not one of their words. TT, that's a common word that you could say. But it got to the point that when they're bringing in their food and they're trying to test me to see if I'm gonna get disappointed. Well, they brought in. I thought, here they came in with one gal came in with some. I thought, now what in the world is that? It looked like if you let your beans out in the garden too long and they're in the pod and they got little lumps on them, and one of them beans about that long. But I looked at it and it was kind of brown. It's a peanut. a green peanut, a pickled peanut. They put it in brine, and I picked it up and I ate it. It wasn't too bad. I just never heard of anything like that. But she tried that on me, and boy, did that make news down the line. The next day there was more of that. So I thought, if that's part of your lunch, I'm gonna try it. But we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun with those people.
How long were you there?
Pardon?
How long were you there?
I was there till I almost came home, till August. That would have been. I got there, labor control, January, middle of January, till about August. So I enjoyed the people. I was starting to learn because I could read the numbers. Then that I learned from my friends over here that I could recite the numbers. Then I learned to read them. And when somebody came in for their daily hires, sometimes they had a piece of paper and that had their whole family history on. And that's all they had for identification. And then what they would do is they had to be, they had to be, I think 15 in order to work. But they're coming in and you can see on the side, it's in a plastic wrapper. And it's written out in there, but they scratch a little hole in there and they change the date of their birth to make them old enough to go to work. But then but it's also written out, it's typed in on a typewriter, on a US typewriter. It's typed in, and I can read that. See, not too many guys could read that, but I could read that and tell if that's the right number. But what goes around comes around, and you give them a little bit of a break, and they come and help you. I mean, we were down at that labor control. Like I say, we were a unit that really didn't have a home. We weren't assigned to a mess hall. We slept right down there, right in the labor control building. If the gate was gonna be ambushed at night, we had our weapons, and it's up to us to defend ourselves. We had no leader down there, because we were made up of men from different units. I tell you, we were a bunch of misfits. We were from all different units. There was 8 of us, and we were all different artillery units. But anyhow, so we had to basically fend for ourselves. So it's kind of like, if you want to go out and look for trouble, you can find yourself and see if you can get yourself assigned to a bunk someplace. We never had a bunk. We had a bed roll, and you roll it out wherever, on the floor, on the couch. We rolled it out. The Green Line was something funny. They had big spotlights up there on the towers. They would shine out there, and some of the guys they're all, because there's certain areas they got trip flares and stuff out there. The wires are set. If you trip on them, you can set off a flare, a warning or something like that. But we went out there and we played horseshoes because the lights are on at night. Nobody around, and we'd go out there. The guys would come down from the towers, and we'd pitch horseshoes. and because we knew all the people that worked in the mess halls, we'd say, well, tonight we're gonna have a fire. We need some steaks to put on there. They would turn up. They would come along with half a dozen steaks out of the mess hall, But then we're supposed to make sure when they walk out, they don't take anything along with them. So let them have one. One hand washes the other. It goes both ways. No, I got to like those people.
How old were you when you got back?
Pardon?
How old were you when you got back?
I got back 22, I think. I was 21 in jump school. Yeah, 22.
Did you have any post-traumatic stress, nightmares, or
Well, I
anything
still
like that?
This is it. No, I know my Lord, and I know what He did for me. And like I say, if it wasn't for Him, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be here. According to anything anything that man would say, where I was in relation to that bomb, I wouldn't be here.
Did you ever meet anybody from Wisconsin?
Sometimes. One thing is we all would go out drinking. That was still when they had, the beer was in a tin can they had to come down with a big thing and poke the 2 triangle holes in there, a big lever and open it up, poke those holes in there. And we'd sat at a club and I'd say, okay, I want a Schlitz, but make sure you open it on the bottom. What? Well, first of all, it says made Milwaukee famous, that's home. And then I tell them, well, I want it to open on the bottom because I'm too short to reach the top. I'm a short timer. I mean, you get to be, when you're a 2-digit midget was now, that's a big buck. And you're a 2-digit midget and from 99 days on down. You've got only 3 months to go. Then you get to a 1-digit midget. Then you're really short. No, you learn that out in the field. You got upsetting things, but you gotta make the best of it. You gotta make it good, you gotta have fun. Sometimes you guys are, if the guys wanted to play cards or something, you take your cardboard boxes, you tear little hunks out of it, you put a number on there, and you put 10 of them together, shuffle them together, or you draw them, you play cards or your craps or whatever, you play a game. The money in your pocket is nothing. They told us that before we went out in the field. I mean, we were one of the highest paid guys because we were airborne. Airborne, you drew an extra $55 a month. Otherwise, we draw, our regular pay was like $45 a month for a private E3, private E4, yeah, something like that. We got extra $55. We got $65 for overseas pay, and I think $10 for combat pay. But the guy told us right away. He said, if you're out in the field, see, our unit would have been out in the field for a year. You're out there for a whole year. You don't come in except for R&R or leave. You're allowed a 2-day leave, I think, a 3-day leave, and a 5-day R&R. Well, when I went back and got my job in the rear, I didn't put in for R&R. I never took R&R. I saved that for someday I might have to go back out there. So I never did R&R. But they said right away, don't put too much money in your pocket. You don't need it. You're gonna use it. You're gonna put it on the fire to warm your water for your sea rations, because that's what you use for heat. Water they never gave us. They gave us food, but they never gave us water. The only water that we could get is we hung our poncho up on the trees at night, the 4 corners. Poncho is about the size of this thing. And you tie it up, there's in the center there's a hood, you ring it up tight, you tie it in a knot so it doesn't leak, and that hood hangs down. If it rains a little bit, you might get yourself 2 quarts of water out of there. That's your water. That's your water. They never gave us water. And they never would. That was just the thing here. If you were walking by a creek, sometimes you're walking through a little stream of water that big. Well, if there's 50, there might be 150 guys walking through it. You might be number 49, but still, it's looking pretty muddy, pretty black. You take your steel pot off and you glitch some of that in, and while you're walking, you open up a canteen and you start filling them. Sometimes it's so polluted, that's when you learn to drink with your teeth closed. You drink, it suffles out the worms and the leeches and the bugs. Then you can spit them out again. But that's the way you drink that water. But everybody had it. Everybody said, "What are they going to do to you? Send you to Nam?" Yeah. It's a laugh. But you make the best of it. You sit down with a bunch of guys and one guy's got a can with bread in it. So you open your got bread up. So you take the can, you don't take the cover all the way off. You go 3/4 of the way around, you bend the cover over. Now you got a stove. So you set that, it's like a ball of dough. You set it on there and you start a fire underneath. Now what did we have for fire? Remember our Claymore mine that I told you about here? You could take that apart, you got in there with your bayonet, and you pry in there, and you could pop that open like that. And you go in the corners, and you start peeling that out, it's like Play-Doh. And you roll about the size of a marble, that's enough to heat a quart of water. It burns, you like that, you can heat a quart of water. Well, we've had it already where one guy would have a loaf of bread, and you burn it a little bit, now you make toast out of it. You flip it over, you got brown on the other side, you cut it in the middle, now you share it. You got the bread, he's got a can of peanut butter. Man, hey, man, this is like downtown. Sure. I sat down one time, we were out of food, just about out of food, and that's what we put together. 3 guys each had a little bit of can of something. We shared them all together, and we sat there. I remember one time we sat there and watched there's a flock of ants coming. They're walking. They're calling. Here's our foxhole. We dug the foxhole here. We're sitting over here, John, and there's out in the stream. They got real black. The grass got real black. It's all ants. They came and they fell right in the foxhole. They went right in the foxhole. So we watched them. And sure enough, the ants had enough smarts that they went in a corner and they started climbing on top of each other. They stacked themselves up till they had a pile that high, and then now they could climb out. And eventually they were all on there. They climbed on each other and climbed on it. That's what we made fun. That was, I bet you we sat there for 3 hours and watched that. But yeah, you make fun out of a lot of stuff. You make fun out of a lot of stuff. Any other questions? You're welcome to come on up here and view some of the stuff here. I got some, the money that we had in Vietnam, as soon as we got over there, you had to take all the money out of your wallet, especially the paper money, well, even your coins, and it could get it converted over to what they call the MPC, military payment currency. And that they could change. They did that for black market. GIs would be buying stuff or giving it to the civilians, and then they would go and buy something. And if you don't want them to have the greenbacks, you're American, you weren't even allowed to have greenbacks in the country. What they converted, and these pieces I got here, this piece of paper is a dime. So that's worth a US dime. It was. This is worth a nickel. This was worth 25 cents. I don't have any. You'd have to have one that said 100 on it. If this is some of the Vietnamese money. At that time there was piastre. This is 100p. It was a little less than $1. I think it was only worth about 80 cents at that time. This is 20p. And 1p. An eighth of a penny, or 7/8 of a penny.
What do the colored bars on your uniform?
Okay, that was another thing I wanted to talk about. This was my uniform that I wore. There's a combat infantry badge. These meant infantry with the blue, anything with the blue on was infantry. Infantry rope. There's my Purple Heart. And the jump wings. The jump wings has a halo around it. That means I was jump wings. I was in combat. The CIB, that's the rifle and the halo, around it there too, means I was actually in combat. These were jackets that I brought home. This one I liked because it said 173rd on the back. I was gonna wear it. I never wore it because I didn't like the front of it. It's got an insignia on here. On the front, I don't know if you can read it. It says "Death from Above." And I just thought that was kind of gory. So I never wore this jacket in public, even though I came home. So, but I didn't find out, and this one has it too. It says "Death from Above." This is a jacket. Doc Toll was a firefight, a main firefight that happened just before I was there on Hill 875. The way they labeled the hills is the height of it. That's how the contour lines on it. The top number was Hill 875. That was Doc Toll. But the guys talked about it, that was in 67, 68. But anyhow, there it says "Death from Above" too. Now, I didn't know anything about what that meant until it's only a couple months ago, maybe a year ago, I watched Story Television. If anybody ever watches that, the History Channel, and they had a 2-hour special on the 173rd. And I watched that, and that was really I learned a lot from it. And one of the things that I learned is that when Hitler went in to Europe, and he started going into Europe, our government didn't sit there. Our government started figuring out, what are we gonna do? How can we handle something like this? What is he doing? How far is he gonna go? Somewhere along the line, are we gonna get involved? Do we wanna be involved? Well, we weren't really, we stayed out of it until Pearl Harbor. But right after, when Pearl Harbor hit, that was basically an excuse to get involved. But our government had everything planned already, what they're gonna do, and parachuting was the biggest thing. You know, I don't know, did I tell you that one of the main guys that was pushing for parachutes, starting it off, was General Billy Mitchell. The Mitchell Field is named after him. He was a general, and he's one of he started. There's an article in this book here that talks about it line by line how that went. It's in the back. You read it. It gets really interesting about they had it, and somebody did it, and then it was advertised to the world, and actually Germans had it and Russia had it before we did. But they never made anything out of it. They knew of it, they experimented with it a little bit, but Billy Mitchell actually put it more to use. And when when Pearl Harbor happened, our government actually went around. They had different committees that doing this stuff. That was just part of what I learned on television. It's not in there. But they went around to some of our major manufacturers, like Henry Ford was one of them. They said, "What can you do to help us if we need airplanes? Can you do anything?" And a lot of them said, "Yeah, we could do something." So they came up with a plan. And they started, before we were even involved, they were making dies for the punch presses. They started making dies for the punch presses so they could punch out parts. A.O. Smith in Milwaukee was one of the biggest producers of bombshells, because they got the dies for making tanks. That's peanuts to them. They said, "Hey, we can make those. We can make," and they didn't have to change a whole lot. They just needed the steel. Yes.
You know, I would not want to be the hangman that pulls the lever that kills whoever committed murder. That person will die. I would not wanna be the gas chamber executioner or the person who pulls the switch for the electric chair. But when it says death from above, you do not have to apologize, because the government is God's servant, and you were simply carrying out that he brings the government is God's servant to bring wrath upon those that do evil.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get back to that. Part of the organization establishing the paratroopers was they had to make an airplane that they could use that was readily available, and that was the one they made. There was other ones that worked a little bit, but this one, I guess it was smaller, it could get in better areas, it could fly low at night. And they dropped 50,000 troops behind the enemy lines in Germany before the invasion of the beaches. They had all these guys did all these, and when the paratroopers went out, they didn't know where to go. It's kind of a funny. In jump school, I graduated with a class of 500 guys, approximately. There was 500 of us. I was one of 5 guys they picked and said, "Do you want to go on to more training?" Well, I don't know about that. I went to basic training, and after basic training, half of the guys went home. I went right on to Fort Lewis, Washington, and didn't go home. So after Fort Lewis, I went right on to jump school, and didn't go home. So now after jump school, he asked me if I want to stay for more. Another 3 weeks of training. And what they wanted me to do is they call it a pathfinder. If I would have taken that, I could have worn a green beret. Pathfinder. But you know what Pathfinder is? When they're jumping out of an airplane, they send 2 guys out with a radio. And if they go call back, they don't drop the rest of the load. If you land in the water, electric wires or something, they don't drop the rest of the load there. They know where on a map where that is when you jumped out. But if nobody calls back on the radio and says, "Oh, I'm okay, it's a good ground," I'm out in the middle of a cow pasture. "Oh yeah, okay, we'll drop the load there." "Okay, fine." But the 3 months or 3 weeks of training is mostly survival training. How to eat a rat and stuff, and sneak around the enemy.
Okay, I get it. The part you don't like is that I could be one of the dead from above.
No, this phrase, when the 173rd was being dropped in behind the lines, behind the beaches, you know, this took probably weeks to get this many guys in there. I don't know how many planes they had, but remember, they're flying over Germany. I mean, or Hitler's down there with his guys, but he can't see them. It's dark, but he can hear them. He can hear all this noise. So, I mean, he can start shooting. And anyhow, when they called in on the radio and were referring to the paratroopers that they're dropping, their call sign was "Death from above." This is death from above. It was a call sign, a radio call sign, to identify themselves, who they are. Because when those planes came in after a while, back to the airport, they could have been an enemy plane too. So then they would call in. But that was their call sign. Death from above. So it's not such a gory thing. Like for 50 years, I thought I didn't want to wear that jacket. Because of that. I found that out last year. That was their call sign of the 173rd Airborne. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Pastor's gonna finish this off here quick, are you gonna?
I'm just gonna hand out a sheet, and then you can look over, there's just a few Bible verses on it that I think might be helpful. It won't take more than a couple minutes. But I think it is helpful to look at some of the promises God put in writing that I think can give people that are in these kind of war conditions, some sort of supernatural bravery. You can see the first section is from John 11, where Jesus calls himself two names. He calls himself the resurrection, and he calls himself the life. The resurrection's about our bodies. He's gonna bring those back, and he explains that right after the word life. He who believes in me, their body's gonna come back to life, even though their body does. But then he calls himself, I'm the life. So he is saying, because I took everybody's place and suffered their damnation on the cross, then you get to bypass any kind of sensation of what death feels like. So he says, I'm the one that gives people never-ending life. They're alive right now, and then they get shot. When God pulls them or their soul out of their body, then they don't feel what it feels like to be dead, to feel any kind of death, because Jesus was the body double for that stuff. So he says, I'm the life, and whoever's alive and depends on me is never going to die. So the resurrection means your body, the life means your soul. Your soul is simply the part of you that is conscious, is aware, experiences things. That's, Jesus described it as you. He told that dying guy, today you are going to be with me, and we're both going to be in paradise. Both those guys' bodies stayed dead on the cross, but their you and me were not in their bodies, and they were in paradise. And then you can see Jesus keeps talking about this. And notice that those first three are all within a page or so of each other. John 8. I tell you the truth, Jesus says, if anyone keeps my word, he means whoever depends on me, whoever keeps my word will never see death. He doesn't mean your body won't die. He means you'll never know what death feels like, because you won't be in your body. You'll be right away in paradise. You get to bypass all that meeting St. Peter and taking a hard test and pass. You don't have to do any of that, because Jesus, remember they had that commercial about those guys in line outside the pearly gates standing on clouds, and one starts griping and then the bottom falls out on his cloud and he's gone. That's not what the Bible teaches. The Bible teaches either you depend on Jesus and you're right away in heaven without any test, or you don't depend on Jesus. You brush that off as irrelevant, and then you're right away in hell. Look at John 8:24. I tell you that it's a Jesus thing again, his guarantee. Whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. That means, it doesn't say he will get it. It says they have it now. And they won't be condemned. Condemned's a fancy word for damned. They've crossed over from death to life. When did they cross over from death to life? When they heard my word and believes him who sent me. So in a lot of our cases, that happened when we were baptized, right? That's when we became believers in Jesus, and God promises nothing's going to stop us from feeling what death feels like. And then you can see the fourth passage is Jesus taught this same thing to his guys to tell people about and put in writing. The second line, Jesus destroyed death. It doesn't mean he stopped your body from dying. That still has to happen, or people won't take anything he did serious. He destroyed death, and he brought life and immortality. Immortality is when you can't die. So he says, he brought the news of the fact that you won't die. You'll never feel what death feels like because of the gospel. And then you see that 1 Corinthians 15, that's just a quote from the Old Testament. People in the Old Testament believed the same promises. They were in writing in the Old Testament too, because God has always wanted people to hear the message about what Jesus would do to allow us to bypass death, to disqualify from death. And then this is what this would give a soldier some bravery, wouldn't it, Ozzie? I mean, to know you're not going to die. Your body might die, but you're right away going to be in a much better place that Jesus calls paradise. So I think it's important to see how people, especially Christians, who know what the truth is, can still allow themselves to be in real scary, situations, so. All right, that's it, sorry.
Well, thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you for hosting.
Okay.